And welcome everyone to another edition of Huckabee Today. I hope you're enjoying the program every weekday, 6:30 Eastern and 5:30 Central. Well, it wasn't too long ago that I had a delightful visit with a dear friend, Frank Pavone. Frank Pavone is one of the leading voices for life in the country. For a long time, a priest in the Catholic Church. He's been one of my friends and somebody that I have looked up to and enjoyed visiting with over many, many years as we fought shoulder to shoulder in the pro-life community. I make it very clear to people, I will not support candidates who are not pro-life. I just won't do it. I have a PAC called Huckabee. We only support people who are pro-life. Now, they may have varying degrees of how strong they are, but if they do not identify and advocate for the sanctity of human life, I figure they'll have to get their money from somewhere else because I won't give them a dime. It's just that I believe that it's a non-negotiable issue for me. It's not a political issue. It's a moral issue. It's not something that I take a stand on because I think it's politically expedient. As most of you know, I first ran for elected office well over 30 years ago. And sometimes people say, did you become pro-life because you got into politics? And I always tell them, oh, no, you don't understand. I got into politics because I was pro-life. That was first. And I was pro-life back in the 1970s, not long after Roe v. Wade, when I thought about it. I was a college student when that decision came down. And over the years, I've only grown more firm in my convictions. In the late 70s, I was part of launching a group called Southern Baptist for Life. Quite frankly, Southern Baptists weren't that quick in recognizing the importance of valuing every human life. And as a result of that, over time, I saw the evangelical world and the Southern Baptist world become decidedly pro-life. For that, I'm grateful. I'm an evangelical. I'm not Catholic, but I have a great respect for my brothers and sisters in the Catholic Church, and I want to tell you why. They were the leaders of the pro-life movement long before the rest of us ever came to the party. And I'm grateful because I'm convinced that if it not had been for them, most of the rest of us probably would never have understood the importance of this issue from a biblical perspective. And that, to me, is why it's an issue that is not political, it's biblical. And I believe even our voting should reflect biblical worldview rather than just a political worldview. Very happy to have back on the show my friend Frank Pavone, and we're going to get into some very exciting issues, exciting in a way that may not be always pleasurable, but interesting to say the least. Frank, thank you for coming back and visiting with me yet again.
Great to be with you, Governor. Thanks for having me.
I've known you for the most of our relationship, and it goes back, I'd say, 2 or 3 decades, as Father Frank Pavone, because for I don't know how long you can tell us, but you were a priest in the Catholic world, and you were head of an organization that I had nothing but high respect for, and that's the Priests for Life organization, and you led Catholics. You were the leading voice, I think, in American Catholicism. So what happened that you are no longer Father Frank Pavone, but just my friend Frank Pavone?
You know, we are witnessing, and you know, you and I both comment on this, and we're in the battle here in American politics, the weaponization of government, taking otherwise legitimate processes and using them in a way that instead of searching for, going after a crime in search of the people who did it, we're going after people in search of a crime. And this, of course, is not the American way. Well, unfortunately, that weaponization has even crept into the Catholic Church. And I've been a victim of that cancel culture within the church, that weaponization of church government. Now, why? Well, first of all, under Cardinal O'Connor, who ordained me in 1988, he was a strong pro-life advocate also. He passed away in 2000, but he ordained me, and then he gave me permission when I requested of him the opportunity to devote my entire life and ministry to defending the unborn from abortion. He gave me that blessing. John Paul II blessed me in that work. Pope Benedict blessed me in that work. But as our organization, Priests for Life, continued to grow and be more influential, some of the bishops got nervous. And this is the bottom line is some of them didn't want me in that position of leading this big pro-life organization that they didn't have any control over. We were fully in union with the church and her teachings, but they didn't control it. And as my canon lawyer has told me, what they can't control, they kill. So basically, they tried to sideline me, to try to silence me. It didn't work because the people supported and still support our ministry. And it's our board that decides who leads Priests for Life, and my board is still with me 100%. So I'm still leading Priests for Life. They couldn't silence my voice, so they ended up taking away my priesthood instead. Some of these bishops that don't like what we do, and it's a minority, but you get the wrong people in the right place at the right time, they convince the Pope to say you can't be a priest anymore. Now, interestingly, I can still lead Priests for Life because, again, we're governed independently. We're funded just by individual supporters. So my voice continues, but obviously without the priestly collar. And many people in the Catholic world and in the evangelical world are scratching their heads and saying, this makes no sense whatsoever. And it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me either. It's the weaponization of government, and it's inherently irrational.
Frank, I've said to people that I love Pope John Paul II so much that I said sometimes when I would hear him speak, I'd think, my goodness, he's going to make a Catholic out of this Baptist boy, because he was so profound, such a voice for truth. I almost tear up when I think about John Paul II. And he was really the one. You know, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher get a deserved credit for helping to bring down communism in Eastern Europe. But had it not been for John Paul II, this would never have happened. And that whole movement was a spiritual movement long before it became a political one. And you know, when I reflect back, I'm thinking he was the kind of Pope that had such extraordinary respect of the world, not just among Catholics, but among all Christian believers across denominational lines.
Yes.
It seems like that there has been a dramatic turn in the Catholic Church under the current Pope. And I'm not asking you to be overtly critical, but I'm hearing things from this Pope that don't sound like John Paul II for sure, as it relates to human sexuality, to marriage, as it relates to life. So is there a shift in the Catholic Church? If so, what and why?
I would distinguish two things. There is a body of teaching, okay, and it's summarized by 6 words: what the church has always taught. There is a consistent body of teachings that we Catholics identify as Catholic teaching, and most of it, Governor, would be identified by other Christians as fundamental Christian teaching, including on life and sexuality, marriage, and so forth. And then you have, above and beyond that, the personality, the opinions, the approaches of the people in leadership, starting with the Pope. There's no question. This Pope's opinions and personal alliances and way of looking at things is very different from John Paul II. We do not regard the Pope to be an oracle of God, and this is it's a good moment for even Catholics to recalibrate and clarify their thinking about, you know, who is the Pope? The Pope is responsible for teaching, again, those 6 words: what the church has always taught. It's not up to the Pope to create new teachings or God forbid, to stray from the teachings we've already received. Like St. Paul said, if we or an angel from heaven preach to you a different gospel, don't listen to them. Let them be anathema. So we have a problem. We have a problem because the Pope, while he has not, tried to change Catholic doctrine, he knows he can't do that, but nevertheless, he says and does things that confuse people. And that's just a statement of fact. It's confusing a lot of people, Catholics and other Christians as well. And, frankly, I look forward to a time when we're going to have a new president in the United States and a new pope in the Catholic Church. Not to wish ill on anybody, but my goodness, we need it. We need stronger leadership.
Well, I'm going to continue this conversation with Frank Pavone. We will be back in a moment, so don't go anywhere because I have a feeling there are a lot of Christians, Catholics and evangelical Christians, who are interested in what are these trends? Why did they happen? And what does it mean for us? We'll talk about it when we return. Stay put. We are back with my friend Frank Pavone. We've been talking about the trends that are going on in the Catholic Church. Frank, we're seeing it in the evangelical world too. There are people in leadership positions in evangelical churches and even in Southern Baptist churches who I guess could best be described as having gone woke. They no longer say that this is what the Bible says, therefore that's it. There's no further need for us to interpret it. And I guess we're seeing it as well in the Catholic Church. Why did this Pope have some of these views? Some would suggest that he came out of a South American nation that was largely socialist and heavily influenced by that. Is that the primary thing that has driven some of what I think we would call some very different views that this Pope has expressed toward longtime biblical doctrines and traditions?
Yeah, it is a mystery. I think that's part of it. I believe he has a very, very sincere desire to reach those who are on the outskirts of the church. And he's trying, but perhaps he's trying too hard to show to those on the outside of the church or the outskirts of the church that, hey, the church is about more than opposing sexual immorality or abortion or things like that. Okay, sure, of course it's about a lot more than that. But you can't go to the point where you start alienating folks who understand very clearly, as you and I do, and so many of our brothers and sisters, that we're in a battle to preserve those fundamental truths, to preserve the family. Society is being torn apart quite deliberately by our opponents who want to destroy any semblance of Christian doctrine. And we're in the midst of this fight. And in this fight, by the way, what many would call conservative politics, conservative leaders, conservative politicians are the best friends of the church right now. And this Pope seems to have not only a lack of understanding, but really a lack of appreciation of conservative politics, particularly in America. And it's like, I say to him, I mean, I've talked with him 5 times, and people who are close to him I speak with, and I say, please, he needs to understand. Conservative politics in America right now are the best friends of the church. We're going to preserve the very freedom of the church to be the church, and we can't afford, religious leaders making those of us in this arena feel like we're not welcome.
I think that's an important point that you've just made, Frank, because I'd like to believe that transcendent beyond any political worldview is the fact that deep down, for those of us who are Christian believers, politics is secondary. If the Republican Party doesn't want to support things that matter to me from a biblical worldview, then I won't be a Republican. Maybe I'll be an independent. Maybe I'll join the Tories. I don't know what I'll join, but I'm not going to ever compromise my deep biblical faith just to be popular within a political party. I want to speak to something that has been hard for many of us to understand. President Biden, before he's decided not to run for re-election, has said, that he's a proud Catholic. He calls himself a faithful Catholic and a loyal Catholic. So does Nancy Pelosi. But they've been about as strong advocates for same-sex marriage and for transgenderism and for abortion, issues that are the antithesis of biblical worldview when it comes to human sexuality, marriage, and for life. So how do those of us who are evangelical need to look at this and say, how does the church continue to say, yeah, you can be a really faithful, good Catholic, but at the same time take views on these critical biblical issues that are completely opposite of what Scripture teaches?
We would maintain that when we speak of the church, we have certain leaders in the church, the Pope included, and many bishops in America, who are giving a pass to politicians like Biden and Pelosi, claiming to be Catholic, and there are many others of that same cut from that same cloth. These church leaders are not representing where the church really stands. I think, Governor, that one of the explanations for this is that both Biden and Pelosi, they have certain priests that are speaking to them. You know, they're not theologians themselves. So where do they get this confidence to say, oh, yes, I can still be a practicing Catholic? Because there are some priests that are just as guilty as they are of misrepresenting where the church really stands. Look, the church has got to be based on common sense. Okay. They are not representing the Catholic faith. And the sooner we call it out, the better. We can't just keep, it's weak leadership when you've got such a glaring contradiction that everybody sees, and then they're looking at the leaders and saying, when are you going to say something about this? You know, and I've spoken out very clearly against Biden and Pelosi. In fact, that's one of the things, going back to our earlier conversation, that got me in trouble with some of the bishops. Oh, you're being too political. I say, no, I'm being Catholic. I'm being Christian. When people like Biden and Pelosi promote baby killing and promote transgender and all this, and the church calls them out on it by name, that is not the church being political. That is the church being the church. And America needs that, and the world needs that, and all Christians need that clear, decisive leadership.
And this Baptist says to my Catholic friend, amen, brother. By the way, I want to tell you, I consider you my dear Christian brother as well as my friend. I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you anytime, anywhere, on any platform. Frank Pavone, what a pleasure to have you just be so candid with us. And thanks for being with us today and giving us these insights. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor.
And thanks for being with us. We have a few of your emails. We want to share with you what you're thinking, what you're saying, and we'll do that right after this. I can only hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Frank Pavone as much as I did. What a blessing to have him on. We said we're going to get to some of your emails, and we are. We're going to do it right now, and I'll just remind you that you can send yours to us simply by emailing us at comments@mikehuckabee.com. We got this from Kerry. He says, I love your daily show. I want to thank you for the former Secret Service agent that you had on. He gave the best overall explanation I've heard to this point. I thank him for his past service. I agree with you. I thought he was just terrific. He gave us insights in a candid, fresh way. I wish he had been testifying to Congress recently instead of the Secret Service director, who basically didn't answer a single question from Democrats or Republicans. This comes to us from Valerie. She lives in Minnesota. Beautiful state, but too stinking cold in the winter. But I admire you for living there all winter long, Valerie. She says, I've been thinking for a long time about women saying, my body, my choice. Where are men in this conversation? A woman cannot get pregnant naturally without a man's involvement. I've always advised my son that if you're not ready to be a father, then it's up to you to make sure it doesn't happen. Most abortions are the result of reckless behavior, not thinking of the possible consequences of that behavior. And I would just say, Valerie, thank you for your clarity on that, and I agree. One of the trends that I'm seeing that I so appreciate is that more of the crisis pregnancy centers around the country, in fact, most of them, not only minister to the women and try to help them in their decisions to choose life, but they're also reaching out to the biological fathers, to the men, and helping them to see their responsibilities and their role in this. And I think it's long overdue for us to recognize that it does take two people for us to have a child. This comes to us from Don, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. What a beautiful part of the world. I was there back in June and enjoyed every moment of it. Says, we enjoy your show. The only way I'm able to make sense of Mr. Trump's experience in Butler, Pennsylvania is found in the Psalms. Though I am surrounded by troubles, you will preserve me against the anger of mine enemies. Well said, Don. Very well said. We have one more break. These are the folks who help make this show possible. Listen carefully to their messages, and I'll be back with a final word right after this. Our show, we hope you enjoy all of them. Be sure to email us at comments@mikehuckabee.com. Don't forget our weekend show coming to you from Nashville every Saturday and Sunday. Coming up next, Alan Jackson, you don't want to miss. For us, thanks for joining us. Till next time, good night and God bless.